Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about how the United States is spending heavily to build an unmanned fleet in an attempt to counter China. However, the test mission suffered a major setback. In addition, a prediction from 8 years ago has come true. Trump has really become a Chinese spy, and now he has declared an all-out war on key new energy sources like wind and solar power. Although everyone expected this day would eventually come, it is still quite shocking when it actually arrives. On August 20th, Trump announced on social media that he would no longer approve wind or solar power projects in the United States. He said that the days of stupidity in America are over. He declared that in any state that builds and relies on wind and solar power, the cost of electricity and energy has reached record highs, calling it the scam of the century. Prior to this, he publicly lashed out, saying that New Jersey's stupid and ugly wind turbines are about to destroy the state. Energy prices have risen by 28% this year, yet the electricity supply still cannot meet the state's demand. The construction of wind turbines must be stopped. In Trump's view, so-called green energies like wind and solar power are all scams that drive up, rather than lower, electricity prices in the United States. So he is determined to say no. According to the media outlet New Tankin, many American netizens jokingly compared Trump to the protagonist Don Quixote in the novel, a fool who mistakes windmills for giants and declares war on them. However, under Trump's tweets, there are also many Americans cheering him on, believing that the president has finally had the courage to stand up, expose these grand conspiracies, and do a great deed. Some people are skeptical, saying that, while you can argue there are issues with wind power, solar power is actually very good. Aren't many remote areas relying on solar energy for electricity? There are also quite a few mischief makers in the US who immediately asked Musk's AI tool whether what Trump said was correct. According to Musk's large AI model, and based on data from the US Department of Energy, the average electricity price in the US is about 16 cents per kilowatt hour. In states where the combined share of wind and solar power exceeds 10%, most have electricity prices lower than the average 16 cents per kilowatt hour. For example, in Texas, the proportion of renewable energy is about 30%. And the electricity price is only 15.5 cents per kilowatt hour. In North Dakota, where new energy accounts for 35%, the electricity price is just 13.07 cents per kilowatt hour. In Oklahoma, the share of new energy is 40% and the electricity price is 12.9 cents per kilowatt hour. In Washington state, the proportion of renewable energy is even higher, reaching 60% with an electricity price of only 14.2 cents per kilowatt hour. However, there are a few exceptions. For example, in California, the proportion of renewable energy is about 35%, but the electricity price is as high as 35.03 cents per kilowatt hour. However, California also has its own unique circumstances, including high system costs and the extremely high electricity demand brought about by AI development. It also has relatively aggressive energy tax policies, which are passed on to electricity bills. In this regard, California is more of an exception than the norm. So the conclusion from AI is that Trump's claim that wind and solar power are all scams that raise rather than lower electricity prices in the US is likely incorrect. I can't help but sigh. The Biden administration supports new energy, but if Trump comes to power, all new energy subsidies will be cut. The Biden administration restricts traditional energy, while Trump gives the oil industry the green light, calling out, "Baby, my baby, this is American politics." In just a single year, policies can make a perfect 180-degree turn, leaving the whole world stunned. The course of a nation is no longer determined by the beacon of foresight, but by the pendulum of the election cycle. Each swing claims to be correcting a deviation, but instead it leaves the world dizzy from the violent jolts. It reminds people of the Trump 1.0 era, when the renowned New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman wrote an article in 2017 boldly titling it, "Trump is China's undercover agent." Friedman said that everyone was busy investigating whether Trump was a puppet of Russia. But that's wrong. It's all just a smokescreen. In fact, Trump is actually a Chinese spy, and he is clearly dedicated to making China great again. Just look at the facts. Friedman went on to say that Trump abandoned the free trade agreement the US had reached with 11 other Pacific countries, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. He also mentioned that Trump called climate change a hoax. He publicly and bitterly criticized Trump, exclaiming, "Foolish, Mr. President." Friedman then published a series of posts saying, "All right, let's assume climate change is a hoax. So, Mr. President, do you believe in math? Do you believe in mathematics? Right now, there are 7.5 billion people on Earth. By 2030, the population will reach 8.5 billion. If most of them drive cars like Americans, eat lots of protein, and live in big American-style houses, what will the result be? Everyone will consume and burn up the earth, destroying fisheries, rivers, and forests. He said, regardless of whether climate change is real, clean energy will become the next major global industry. So what is Trump's plan? To produce more coal and oil? Hey, if America can't dominate the next major global industry, how can America become great? Friedman's conclusion at the time was that Trump would make China great again. Now, with Trump abandoning wind turbines and solar energy, Friedman's prediction from 8 years ago has come true. Could Trump actually be a secret agent for China? Otherwise, why would he hand over such an important industry entirely to China? In addition, I want to talk about how the US has always been competing with China militarily, especially in the field of unmanned technology. Yesterday, I talked about how China is ahead of the US in unmanned wingman drones. Today, I want to discuss unmanned surface vessels. According to a Reuters report from the UK on August 20th, several sources revealed for the first time that the US Navy recently conducted 2 advanced unmanned vessel test missions. However, both missions experienced software failures or human errors, causing the vessels to go out of control and resulting in failed tests. Earlier this year, the US Navy removed Haven Smith, the head of the Unmanned and Small Combatant Craft Program Office, from his position. The disarray within the US military's procurement department has also had a significant negative impact on the progress of the Navy's unmanned vessel program. According to sources cited in the report, at a meeting of the US Department of Defense last month, Deputy Secretary of Defense Stephen Vanberg raised serious concerns about the cost-effectiveness of certain procurement projects. Reuters reported that in June, the US Navy conducted a test of a small unmanned vessel off the coast of California. During the test, one of the unmanned vessels suddenly accelerated, causing a tugboat participating in the test to capsize. The tugboat's captain was thrown into the sea. By July, the US Navy conducted another test off the coast of California, showcasing the Department of Defense's top unmanned vessel project. Footage obtained by Reuters shows that during the test, one of the unmanned vessels accidentally caught fire. When officials tried several times to fix it, but it still malfunctioned, another unmanned vessel collided with the starboard side of another ship, then flew off the deck and into the sea. According to more than a dozen people familiar with the matter, the incident involved 2 unmanned vessels developed by American companies Saildrone and Black Sea Technologies. According to well-informed sources, both of these incidents were caused by software malfunctions or human error, including communication breakdowns between onboard systems and external software. Since the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war, the use of unmanned vessels has attracted significant international attention. Ukraine has developed unmanned vessels capable of carrying weapons, explosives, and reconnaissance equipment, with each unit costing only $250,000. These unmanned vessels can be remotely controlled to carry out suicide attack missions. The Ukrainian military has used this type of equipment multiple times to attack Russian warships. Reports say this has drawn the attention of US military leaders who have recognized the significant potential of unmanned vessels. The United States is working to develop an unmanned fleet capable of autonomous group operations without human command, with costs much higher than those of Ukraine's unmanned vessels. The cost of each vessel could reach several $1 million. In 2023, the US Department of Defense launched a multi-billion-dollar program to procure several unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned boats, along with their related control software. According to procurement records, the US Navy has already provided at least $160 million to Black Sea Technologies. This company produces dozens of unmanned reconnaissance boats each year. Meanwhile, US-based Sarnikok Technologies also has the capability to manufacture unmanned boats. It has already earned at least $20 million through prototype contracts. After US President Trump returned to the White House, he made the development of unmanned boats a key project. In April of this year, the US Navy's Unmanned Small Combatant Craft Program Executive Office announced that Black Sea Technologies had successfully demonstrated its boat control software, marking an important step forward in advancing maritime unmanned systems. Last month, the Trump administration passed the Great America Act, allocating nearly $5 billion for the development of unmanned boats. However, analysts say that a series of recent failures by the US Navy indicate that the country's unmanned boat program still faces many challenges. It can be summarized as follows. First, the US military is seeking to develop unmanned combat units to counter China. However, Secretary of Defense Hegses has already admitted that the US is clearly lagging behind China in the field of drone technology. According to the New York Times, more than a dozen US military officials and drone industry experts have also admitted that the United States is lagging behind China in drone manufacturing, operation, training, and defense. Second, the serious operational errors exposed during the US military's unmanned boat tests, most of which were rather basic mistakes, also demonstrate that the US is similarly far behind China in the development of unmanned boats. The United States often tries to develop very expensive and luxurious products, but after many years of effort, they still can't produce them. You could say their claims are questionable and costs keep spiraling out of control. The shortcomings in US production capacity are also fully exposed in their military equipment.